Ross White is going to stand up today and tell us all about his childhood years through preschool through to year 7.
Sorry, I disappointed you there.
Ross White from Instant Security.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, sorry to disappoint the masses. There's no slideshows, no infant stories. Over the years, I've been in quite a number of business clubs similar to this, and one of the most important aspects of the club is everybody gets to know everybody. So I was going to go through a year or two down the track. We go to the technical side of things. I've got a brother and sister. Mum and Dad passed away a couple of years ago with cancer, so I've gone through all the dramas that most people have to go through eventually, that sort of thing. I'm the eldest of all the children in the family. My younger brother owns Instant Security Alarms. He started Instant Security from scratch, a steel company. Going back to teenage years, Dad joined the Federal Police, or actually Dad was in Australian Commonwealth Police in the mid-70s, and like everybody then, you were sent straight to Canberra. So, didn't particularly like Canberra too much. The thing I did enjoy was at a very young age I started playing senior grade AFL at 16. So that was pretty good, going to college and on TV and photos in the paper and that sort of stuff, so it was pretty good. I really didn't like Canberra, but that's the way life was. Dad, with his background in the army, he was snapped up and was part of the Prime Minister's bodyguard squad. And mid-70s, when Mr Whitlam got the sack for the first time in the history of Australia, the Governor-General needed a bodyguard. And the only bodyguard he ever had was my dad. He didn't want anybody else, so every time he needed it, and it wasn't a full-time position there, it was just when they needed protection. For those years it was pretty fiery, and he was with Sir John Kerr quite a lot of the time. Interesting story at that particular time. A lot of people don't quite realise that Sir John Kerr and Gough Whitlam were very, very close friends. Gough's son, Nicholas Whitlam, is godson to Sir John Kerr. And people didn't know that. They thought they were enemies from day one, but it wasn't the case. They're very close friends, and he had to sack him because he had to sack him. Yeah, so it was quite interesting, the stories of Dad come home and tell about, who he's with today and yesterday and all the rest of it. And it was very, very interesting. Later in his life, he'd say, look, I was sworn to secrecy on a lot of stuff. But he said, I was sworn to secrecy for things for 20 years, for 30 years. So every so often he'd say, sit down, I've got a couple of stories to tell you. So it was very interesting with some of the things that he discussed. In Canberra, probably the only thing that kept me there was playing football. I really wanted to come back to Queensland, even though Aussie rules wasn't strong in Queensland like it was down the rest of the southern states of Australia. It was still quite strong, the standard was extremely high. I was fortunate enough to get a contract to play up in Brisbane with a club called Western Districts, so that was in 1977. Part of the contract, I said, look, I work for Attorney General's Department. I said I want to transfer in the government. So they organised that and away we go. I've just skipped a little bit there. I might just talk a little bit about what I did in the Attorney General's Department. Straight out of high school after the sixth form, I was an interdepartmental courier for the Attorney General's Department. So what that meant, I was only 18, I would hand deliver documents from the Secretary of the Attorney General's or the Crown Solicitors or whoever to Parliament House to Government House. So I'm walking through all the halls of old Parliament House, hand delivering important memos.
You didn't ride a scooter like they do today?
No, we didn't have a push bike. So
right.
That was great. They had to walk through the corridors and the old Parliament House. I don't know how many people have been there, it's a rabbit warren. But it was really interesting, it was a good job, and you felt like King Dick walking through Parliament House, passing all these old politicians and all the rest of it. It was very interesting. Yeah, you get urgent call, got to go out to Government House, he goes through, obviously David Smith at that time was the right-hand man to the Governor General, and it was really special. A year or two after that, I then I was promoted to the travel officer's position at the Attorney General's Department, and the job there was to organise travel accommodation for the Attorney General's, Crown Solicitors or whoever legal officers. At that particular point in time, legal aid office was just in the early stages of being developed in our building. So that was interesting times. There was a lot of scandal in the mid to late 70s. Al Grasby was in there setting up his offices. Junie Morosi, the big affairs going with Jim Cairns, and I don't know if anybody remember this sort of stuff. But at that time, it was really, front page TV stuff. And we were there, I was seeing these people on a day-to-day basis. So it was very interesting. When I moved up to Brisbane, with the negotiation contract, back those days, there was no full-time professionals in AFL, the money just wasn't there for that, unlike today. So I had a job, as I said, in the Commonwealth government departments. So I said, look, I want my continuity of service to continue over. If you can get me a job in the federal government in Brisbane, I'll be really grateful for that. So as it turned out, the chairman of the Western Districts Old Boy Association was the chief manager of personnel and industrial relations of Telecom Australia. So I got a job like that. So I was there for quite a number of years, finished up as a personnel manager, dealing with retirement, validities and all pension entitlements, that sort of stuff, all that stuff. Interviewing a lot of old guys. Some of the guys you interview, they started as a telegram boy for the PMG when they were 12, 13 and 14, going right through to 65. And coming in, real little shriveled up man that looked like this. Now I'm nearly 60 this year, and I'm nothing like those guys were. They were old, frail, and sadly, I'd have an interview 6 months later with the wife, because Mr. Smith, whoever, passed away. Very common. Not many of them lasted more than 6 months after they retired. Really, really sad. But that's just the way it was at that particular point in time.
When was that, Ross? What year? What time?
I got the contract up here in 1977, and I finished there at Telecom in 85, so mid-80s.
So in mid-80s, okay. But you're saying in mid-70s you played AFL in Queensland and survived?
77. I started in 77 here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 21. And lucky enough...
He didn't pick up on that, did he?
No, I don't want to. I was really fortunate because the three first years in Brisbane played in 3 grand finals at the Gabba. Won 2 of them. I kicked the winning goal in 1977. Now, I don't know, any AFL supporters here? Okay, back in 1977, and rugby league actually, 1977 there was a tie in the grand final in Melbourne between Collingwood and Carlton, I think it might have been. And it was a tie. The same year, the rugby league had a tie. I don't know if it was, I wouldn't follow rugby league at all then. They had a tie. Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyhow, 20 seconds to go in our grand final in 1977. We were, what was it? 1 point, we were 1 point in front. But yeah, 1 point in front, 20 seconds to go, I was a final kick, I kicked the goal. So if I'd missed it and kicked it behind, it would have been another tie. So it would have been 3 ties in 3 different states. It's quite interesting. But that was my really claim to fame, playing on the rules is kicking out winning goal, so it's pretty special. Now, with my career at that particular point in time, I wasn't terribly happy being a public servant, but it was a good paying job and all the rest of it. 1985 come along, and I just decided to move away from a very secure job, and I did something I never thought I'd ever do. One of the things we did, playing football, we weren't allowed to drink alcohol, we weren't allowed to go out, it was really strictly controlled, so I said, damn this. So I got out and got a second job, working in nightclubs. So I wasn't drinking, I wasn't going out partying, but I was in the environment, having a good time. So being 6'5" and pretty fit those days, I wasn't a bouncer, I couldn't fight, but I was strong and fit, had a personality there. I didn't want to cause a drama, I was there to solve any situation that arose. The term bouncer doesn't sort of strike me very well, but I was a bouncer. Anyhow, that led me in 1985 to resign from Telecom and start up United Security Services, which was providing specialised bouncers. So at that particular point in time in the security industry, there was no need for training of any sort. You had to get a licence under a private investigator's licence, you had to get it. But it wasn't very controlled. So there was lots of bouncers out there, and they were causing typical dramas that bouncers would. So one of the other friends in the football club, he was a sergeant in the licensing branch. He said, what are you guys doing? I said, come in and show you. So we had an ex-ambulance officer there. He was training us up in basic first aid. We had an ex-sergeant of the police who was training us up in liquor licence laws and basic laws around assault and just general laws to be very handy in that entertainment style industry. He said, this is really great. He said, look, part of my role at the licence branch, we have lots of complaints about bouncers in licensed premises. He said, I really like what you're doing, I like the style of guys you're employing. Talk about short men before, we didn't employ anyone under 6 foot. They had to have a personality.
See, it's not just now.
And there's another story I'll tell you in a moment. Remind me of that fact, I'll tell you something a little bit about tonight. So we just had to employ guys who had a personality, who were well groomed and didn't want to fight. And it wasn't easy to get a lot of that stuff, but we managed to get quite a lot in the end, because we did lots of work. So, believe it or not, before the licence branch went to jail a few years later, they were coming in supporting our business, because they knew this was great for the entertainment industry. After a number of years, we ended up getting about 85 venues between the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast on a regular basis. So that was across between nightclubs and hotels and live band venues. I'm still half deaf from Dire Straits concerts and this sort of stuff. And you could say overnight success, it took about 4 or 5 years. One of the major contracts we had was the Hilton. Now, Hilton in Brisbane was based in the mall, and my office was across the mall in an old building called Penny's Building, which Coles owned. So one day I had my supervisor from the Hilton come over and say, Ross, he said, there's a chap in the foyer there at the Hilton asking some really interesting questions about us, and are we employed by the hotel, are we resident? And he's very keen to have a chat to us. And he sent him over, he didn't come over, he said, look, give my card to your boss and ask him to give me a call. This guy's name was Jeff Harris. He was the general manager of World Expo Fun Park. Now this is a couple of years before Expo opened up. And he said, look, I really love the style of individual you're employing. I would really love you to put a tender in for a major contract for guard work over an Expo. And it was the Fun Park. So, to cut a long story short, we're down on a short list up against Chubb and MSS and a company called United, no one's ever heard of us. Anyhow, we got the contract. So I ended up employing 120 staff over on the Expo site. Absolutely awesome time. Now, I don't know if anyone here ever went to Expo. Absolutely brilliant. I lived there for over 18 months. We were there 6 months prior to Expo and 18 months after Expo, because the Fun Park stayed on. So at the Fun Park, it was a 24-hour, 24/7 contract. So we were responsible for some nightclub security, not a lot of retail security. I employed, at that time, was my wife-to-be and her sister. They were undercover retail store detectives. And we had cash escorts, normal random patrols, really interesting. Staff man in the control room, working all the cameras and access controls. It was really, really good. Interesting thing is at Expo, at the Fun Park, we had every crime except a murder in the Fun Park. And I mean every crime. It was very, very interesting times. One of the big things there, really local police hated, was the fact Sulu Edwards, he was the main brains and everything and supported who started up XO88. He was the one who instigated the Expo Act. It was a very political decision to go for a trade fair like Expo for 6 months. There was a lot of opposition to it. A lot of people said, this is not going to work. How are we going to get people come in for 6 months? And whoever went there realised it was just a huge success. One of the most important things that Sulu did under the Expo Act was to give extremely high powers to the security staff on the Expo site. Myself and my staff had more power than the Queensland Police. We had power of arrest and power of detention on the site where the police didn't. The police have to come to me and say, Ross, could you get one of your staff to come down and arrest that guy there and bring him up to our command centre? I tell you, the coppers, the old man being a copper, they didn't like this. But that's how we had really strict control over the site. And it stayed away from all the political aspects of the Queensland government. Really interesting times. Really, really interesting. I'm really grateful for that opportunity of that. So much experience there. It was incredible. Now, 4 years before Expo, my younger brother, was 7 years younger, said to me, look, he said, you know, I'm working for Walmart Security as a technician. I said, yeah. He said, I'm getting a few of our clients wanting to know, would he be interested in starting his own business? He said, what do you think? I said, yeah, give it a go. So I never thought I'd do it. Give it a go. So he did. So in 1985, he started up instant security alarms. one man, one technician, little van, going around doing work. A friend of a friend was a chap called John Van. And he ended up owning all the Super AMAR scores, and he's in the top 10 wealthiest in Queensland, very wealthy man. He took my brother under his protection and guided him through, and he was my brother's mentor for a good 20 odd years, and one of the reasons why that company is such a huge success today. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. Now, at the end of Expo, I decided that I either have to put a big cash injection into the company to go to the next level or sell, so I decided to sell. So I sold to my operations manager at the time and went our own ways. So my brother said, look, he said, you can sell ice to Eskimos. He said, I'd like you to come over and join me at Instant Security. I said, I know nothing about alarms, so you don't have to. He said, I'd really like you to come on board. At that time he had about 600 bottle clients and he had 4 or 5 staff, I think it was roughly. So I said, okay. So he said, the first thing you've got to do is work in our control room. It was a very basic little control room, nothing like we got today. It was an ungraded control room, but just providing great service. Working in the control room for 3 months, I think, and 6 months on the tools, the technicians just running cables around the factories, so you get an understanding of how to quote. Great, no worries. So it would have been, one of them was when I started, and started the sales role. Cut a long story short, I was there until about 2005, and that period there was only myself and one junior salesperson, and my brother did a bit of sales. Most of the contacts, corporate stuff through John Van and all his friends. 2005, we had over 10,000 monitored lines, and by then my brother bought a building where we are now and got the Grade 1 certification now. Grade A1, that's the highest level you can get. We can monitor the Reserve Bank. If Australia had Fort Knox, we could monitor that. When the floods were on a few years ago, the Army stepped in and they used our control room as their base during the floods. It's pretty, and I hope one day you guys get a chance to come down and look. I'm more than happy to take 2 or 3 or 4 at a time ago. It's quite interesting. Yeah, so getting away with Grade A1, it really, catapulted the company. Because in the industry, that's a big deal. So fortunate enough, we've got a lot of big chain clients. Lots of chain clients. Our biggest client at the moment is Domino's. We look after Domino's corporate, Australia-wide. So flying to those or whatever. We do Coles, Woolworths, all the hotels, lots of other hotel chains, lots of retail, lots of domestic, whatever's got 4 walls and a roof and a door, we can monitor it and we do. Now, around 2005, I just needed another challenge. So I went out on my own and did a few things, that was okay. And then I started getting into more specialised security, which was solar-powered cameras. I did that for a number of years until camera new came in, there was no funds for anything, and that sort of dried everything up. So doing consulting here and consulting there and all different sort of stuff.
So you sold most of your cameras to government, is that what you were saying?
Those solar-powered ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, to councils and government entities. Yeah. As well as Santos and all those companies, but yeah, because a lot of the funding dried up, it affected lots of industries down the track. So that led to my brother saying, look, there's a few changes happening up in Toowoomba. He said, one of the local companies here, this was back in July last year, local company, one of our nemesis up here, has been sold. They sold all their clients to a company in Sydney. And he said, we're getting a lot of local businesses ringing up wanting to know, can we do the monitoring? So I think this is about time we have a couple of representatives in Toowoomba. And he asked would I be interested in coming back, working for them and starting at Toowoomba, so that's why I'm here. So we've had 200 or 300 clients here for 25 years, but never had anyone on the ground here to support those existing clients and obviously to really develop the business. So it's a challenge, I must admit, but it's going on. So far I've averaged 1 new client a week, so it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Joining clubs like this is good. I just see you and that's the purpose of what we're doing here. I'm going backwards and forwards here because this really wasn't planned. So some other areas of security that is of interest. When the G20 was on last year, one of my staff from back the Hilton days, he's developed his own business, which is called Show Risk Management. He specialises in workplace health and safety, auditing, and just risk management. He phoned me up and said, look, he said, I've got a contract to supply workplace health and safety auditors for the G20 celebrations, which was a 3 or 4 week period before the G20 was on. He said, would you be interested in doing some casual work for that? So, oh, awesome. So I did that for a month or so. So that was good on the resume, G20 workplace health and safety auditor. But I said,
So what does the G20 workplace health and
G20 celebrations?
Yep.
Okay. What they did, they had a lot of entertainment all around the CBD area in South Bank, in Brisbane. They had a lot of laser shows. The light shows there are absolutely brilliant. So they had a lot of high voltage equipment all through the place. So it was all associated with the safety of that. Basically, we didn't have to do much. We were there in case there was an issue to respond to.
You walked around with a clipboard?
No clipboard.
No clipboard.
Yeah. Really, they spent about $10 million in a month, and it was just protecting their backsides, really. It was all about workplace health and safety. It was all about, really. But yeah, that was quite interesting. Yeah, very interesting. But overall, that's very, very brief little history of what I've done. Lots of interesting stuff. Lots of interesting people. Some of the celebrities that I've done security for. Alan Border, Alfie Langer, who's the swimmer? Perkins, Kieran Perkins. I've done 3 of his premises during the time he was world champion and stuff. Interesting. Mostly lots of VIP sports people, because back then lots of money and they were targets. They were really targeted. A lot of break-ins in their businesses and their homes. But I've been fortunate over the years to meet a lot of people like that. A lot of rugby man's gone, Peter. Mark Lone, Australian captain of rugby many years ago, he's one of our clients. But yeah, over the years, most of their work comes from referrals. We've never done any advertising except for Yellow Pages. And for a period of 2 months, 15 years ago, we did a small spout on full EC radio. The rest of it is just providing good quality service, good equipment, and getting referrals. And that's how we've gone. We'd be the largest privately owned company in Queensland, possibly Australia. In Queensland, Chubb, we're the only company bigger than us. Size is nothing. We're totally different to Chubb. It's the service side. It's the company because we're doing a good job. We don't put in really cheap equipment because you get too many false alarms, headaches. It's all good quality equipment. Design it properly. One of the scary things I've noticed in Toowoomba, and I hope it doesn't apply if you've got alarms out here, but easy to check for yourself. One of the big things with security alarm systems, it can be used against you in a break-in if it doesn't comply to basic standards. Now, I would say 9 out of 10 systems that I audited here in Toowoomba do not meet basic standards because the installs that are going up here, just take shortcuts. Now, who's got an alarm at home or in business here of their own? Where you work, someone's got an alarm. Okay, when you go to work, find your main control box. It's about 12 inches square. It'll be in your common room or a cupboard somewhere. That has to be in a room protected by a motion sensor. If it's not, it doesn't comply. And that can be used against you if it's a bad claim against your insurance policy. Like what happened a few years ago in Brisbane floods. People found out how severe the insurance company, the insurance industry can be. They'll find ways of not paying up, or delay payment, or part payment. Your alarm doesn't meet standards. If you have a bad break-in, they'll go back and say, well, that system doesn't meet basic standards. We took a higher level of risk because it wasn't under standards. We've got a problem here. But just go and it's the main thing you've got to check. The level of protection through your premises is irrelevant, really, in the eyes of the insurance company. But that's the main thing. Check your main motherboard is protected. If someone got to that, ripped it off the wall, they can clean you out if there's no alarms. One of the biggest, how long have we got to go?
You've got really no time.
Okay, just quickly.
Just questions?
The last few years, we would probably install more camera systems than alarm systems. Like I said earlier on in the introduction. High definition, which is 1080p. Like you see in Foxtel and digital TV, it's really, really, really good quality. And Mark, if you guys do decide to go ahead, that's the quality you're going to get. It is really excellent. Any questions?
Yeah, you were going to say something about people over 5'9".
Yes. One of the most successful nightclubs in Brisbane was a nightclub called Sybil's. Absolutely brilliant. High
Oh,
class.
wow. I used to go to Sybil's.
In the early days, you had to have a jacket to get in. Girls were in gowns to get in there.
Yeah.
We didn't have many problems there because we were right on top of it. We'd suss out a problem and stop it before it went bad. But over a period of time, every time there was an issue, some guy was causing the dramas. Really, it was just short man disease suffering. So what we did, as they walked into the main foyer of Sybil's, we had an imaginary line on the door. If they didn't make that, any excuse, whatever it was, weren't allowed in. And the obvious reason was dress code. So we used dress code so they couldn't come in. Yeah, that's how bad it got.
So it's not just CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. You had to be over 5'9" to get into Sybil's.
Oh, probably over 5'6", 5'7", roughly. Yeah, down here, whatever.
So
But
how
that's
long
how.
before the clientele started getting aware
Sorry,
of this and
what's
coming
that?
back, go home and change
We don't want
that?
short people around us.
Excuse me?
Short men.
No, short male.
Short males.
Because a few beers and
But
that's
they must have got
not.
mice.
Well, we didn't know because they weren't in. Sorry. And whatever the reason was, that was it. Make any reason up, they weren't allowed in. That's it. And if they were in there, we'd get them out. With no force, just if they got in there, so terribly sorry, complain, have to leave. Want to come back next week? They never weren't allowed back in anyway. So we get them out. And by doing that, very few problems. Very few. Interesting thing on the new TV a few years ago, had a sign, they talked about full moons, and the sign said, it's not right, no one reacts differently on a full moon, this sort of stuff. Well, you go and talk to any copper or anyone working in hotels, nightclubs, entertainment industry, they'll tell you, full moon, dramas go through the roof. Absolutely through the roof.
It does it to me. Great. Yeah. Absolutely. This happens every time there's a full moon.
One question coming up.
Yeah, one more question. Anyone? Thank you very much, sir.